However, I insist that my goal is not to look for a particular miracle on which I can base my faith. No. On the contrary, I try to show that believing in Islam, embracing that Islamic worldview makes sense. It is possible, it is justifiable, and even it is scientifically justifiable. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Chapter 3, Section 3, we are concluding now the Chapter 3. So the section summary. So in summary, I showed that the two visions, the scientific and the religious one, do not have to contradict, they do not have to oppose one another. On the contrary, I see them as two faces of the same coin. As for the few mentions of natural phenomena in the Quran or Hadith, I appreciate the relevance. Relevance at the time of the Prophet ﷺ and today, even though our conception might be totally different. That for me is beautiful. Especially with the Quran, which is taken as the ultimate miracle of the Prophet ﷺ, its literary accuracy, coherence, and applicability gives, I would argue, a miraculous character. By miraculous here, I mean something that exceeds all expectations of a human being having lived 1400 years ago, more than 1400 years ago, in a region that was scientifically neglected. Like the Arabic Peninsula was not one of the major centers of learning, knowledge, and even trade. They have their trade, but it was not the main trading route. I also argue that these realized prophecies can help strengthen belief. However, I insist that my goal is not to look for a particular miracle on which I can base my faith. No. On the contrary, I try to show that believing in Islam, embracing that Islamic worldview makes sense. It is possible, it is justifiable, and even it is scientifically justifiable. And although I spend quite a lot of time in this section to read the text with or through scientific lenses, I would like to remind that the bulk of the revelation, the bulk of the Quran and the Hadith is not to describe the material world. It is to teach about Allah, about God, about my relation to God, about where I come from, what is coming up, and how I should behave in order to succeed in that test. That's the bulk of the message. So in this aim, the miracles can still be useful as arguments to teach about God, Allah, and to point toward God, to reinforce an already established faith, but not necessarily as indisputable argument to coerce, to prove religion. So in other words, if someone does not want to see the sign for what it is, and evidence that God exists, there's always a way how to do so. Like Pharaoh, who refused to accept faith when the staff of Musa turns into a snake. He still resists. And in that ability to resist, to refute the argument, again, I see mercy. I see a possibility to be forgiven by Allah. Subhanallah, subhanallah. Even Pharaoh himself hopes for forgiveness. Even Iblis hopes for forgiveness. Subhanallah. Also, I would like to remind that the fact that sometimes scientifically I cannot explain an event, it doesn't mean that I have to dismiss it. I gave the example of consciousness. Science today does not explain consciousness. How from just a bunch of neurons connected to one another, shooting action potentials here and there, you can build memory, you can build imagination, you can build a sense of self. You don't explain it at the moment. But although you don't explain it at the moment, it's not a reason why you should dismiss it. You don't dismiss consciousness. Today we do not dismiss consciousness. So similarly, if science cannot measure an angel, it's not a reason to dismiss their existence. It just means that science cannot say anything about it. That's it. It shows the limitations of science itself. Science is great, but it has limitations. It's just something to keep in mind. So when we read about miracles, about apparently supernatural events, on the contrary, instead of dismissing them, I would use them as a source of motivation to look further, to push these boundaries further. If the question is whether you should accept these events as having happened, as true, like the splitting of the moon, then I would go back to the hadith, the narrations, and do more historical analysis of these hadith, where they're coming from, how they were preserved. And based on that historicity, you can start building trust about the system, about the narrations, about the whole system itself. Once that trust is in place, then you can take it as true. Then you can fully engage with the meaning carried through these narrations. And if that meaning still contradicts your understanding of the natural world, then it's up to each one of us to interpret these unexplained events, either as natural phenomena that are yet to be explained, or as direct divine intervention. You have the choice. And I believe that that choice will be lifted at our death. But at the moment, I wouldn't see a problem in choosing between one or the other. It really depends which argument you favor, which argument you give more value. As long as the unexplained event remains unexplained, the chosen interpretation, like whether it's a natural phenomena that whose law you still have to derive, or a direct divine action, that interpretation simply reflects a preconceived belief about the world. That's how I take it. But neither interpretation are antagonist to faith. You can still claim and be a Muslim by choosing one or the other. So indeed, the believer can either expect Allah, God, to act directly in the world by halting momentarily the natural laws, or indirectly through laws that you might not know yet, natural laws. Hence, to be unable to explain certain event is not detrimental to faith in either science nor religion. That's important. I will end by stating that while I can understand both sides, the atheist and theist views of the world, given my current scientific understanding of the world and my understanding of this religion, to believe in a divine orchestrations of the world is simply more convincing to me than to believe that this world was just the result of a fortuitous, random sequence of events or a mere quantum fluctuation. وجزاك الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.